Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn Standard 7th, Subject Geography, Lesson number 3, Tides. So before we start, let us see actually what we are going to learn in this lesson. We shall learn what is meant by tides, centrifugal and gravitational force, occurrence of tides, types of tides, the reason behind timings of the tides change daily, as well as we are going to learn waves. So dear children, many times we observe that the sea water is sometimes very close to the coast and sometimes it is very far away from the coast. We call these movements of sea water as tides. Shortly, it is meant by tides are movements of sea water occurring daily and regularly. So, this regularly occurring event is directly related to the sun, the moon and the earth and the gravitational and centrifugal forces that interact between them. So, this was actually what is meant by tides. Now let us see what is meant by centrifugal force as well as gravitational force. Due to its rotation, the earth gets a type of power or a type of force which works away from the center. This force is nothing but centrifugal force. Now due to this force, any object on the earth would have thrown into the space. But it does not occur so. Why? Because the gravitational force is working towards the center of the earth at the same time. And the gravitational force is many times greater than the centrifugal force. Hence, any object on the surface of the earth remains at the place where it exists. Okay. Now let us see how tides occur or the factors responsible for the occurrence of the tides. First point is there, the gravitational pull of the moon and the sun as well as earth is responsible for the occurrence of the tides. Secondly, revolution of the earth around the sun and the indirect revolution of the moon around the sun is also responsible for the occurrence of the tides. And third point is there, centrifugal force generated due to the rotation of the earth is also responsible for the occurrence of the tides. Along with all these points, we should keep in mind some other points also. Those are, the moon is closer to the earth than the sun. Hence, its gravitational force becomes more effective than that of the sun. A place on the earth located at the opposite point of the place experiencing high tide or low tide also experiences high tide or low tide at the same time. Now, this is the result of a centrifugal force of the earth. For example, suppose there is high tide at 0 degree meridian. Then its exactly opposite point is 180 degree meridian. Yes, that point will also experience high tide. This is due to the centrifugal force of the earth. Now let us see types of tides. Generally, the highest high tide occurs on full moon and new moon days, whereas on the days of first and third quarter, the high tide is at its minimum. Spring tides and neap tides are the types of tides. Let us see spring tide. It is better to observe the image to understand the situation of the sun and the moon at the time of spring tide. Now, this is the image or figure which you can see that shows you the spring tide. the situation of the sun, the moon and the earth, or the angles made by these three celestial bodies. So, on new moon and full moon days, the gravitational pull of the sun and the moon act in the same direction. Here you can see the sun and the moon. The gravitational pull of the sun and the moon, here it is working at the same direction. Hence, the tide on these days is much higher than the average high tide. You can see here the bulge. This blue line around the earth shows the bulge of the water. So here you can see the bulge at the high tide is greater. The water at low tide recedes or reduces much more here during the spring tide. Here the low tide, you can see the water level, it has reduced much more, and the bulge here you can see due to the pull of the gravitational pull of this sun as well as moon working at the same direction. Here high tide is greater than that of average. So the water level during spring tide is higher than the average high tide and lower than the average low tide. So this is spring tide. Now let us learn neap tide. Let's observe the image here. We can see here the moon makes a right angle with respect to the earth and the sun twice a month, that is on the first and third quarter of each month. At the places where the sun causes high tide, the gravitational pull of the moon, which is at right angle, also acts on sea water. See here you can see the right angle. Okay, when the gravitational pull of the sun is working, at the same time the situation of moon at right angle, this gravitational pull of moon also works on the sea water. Due to this condition, the water level rise is less than usual at the time of high tide, and fall in the water level is less than usual at the time of low tide. So this condition is called as a neap tide. So keep in mind the position of these three celestial bodies during neap tide. This daily and regularly occurring phenomena has some effects on nature. So let us see the effects of tides. First of all, with the high tide, fish move into the creeks and this helps fishing activity. Number 2, the tides clear the west of the coast and coast area gets cleared. Next, ports do not get filled with sediment. Ports are also clear. Ships can move up to the ports during high tide automatically. During high tide, seawater can be stored in salt pans and salt can be obtained. The tidal force can be used for generation of electricity. The tides help in maintaining the mangroves and the coastal biodiversity. And next is a lack of understanding of the timings of tides may cause accidents to the swimmers who enter in the sea. Okay, so these are the effects of the tides. Now let us understand why timings of the tides change daily. Now you can see sun, moon and earth. This is the sun, the moon and the earth. Now suppose point A, here on the earth, point A experiencing high tide because this point is opposite to moon. opposite to moon. So, now this A point will take 24 hours after completion of one rotation to come on its original place. Previously it was experiencing high tide. Now after rotation, A point has once again it has come to its original position. Now this A point will not experience high tide or same high tide here. Why? Because the moon, meanwhile the moon also would have moved a little ahead or little forward, because we know that moon completes one revolution around the earth within 28 days approximately, isn't it? So, meanwhile, when earth completes one rotation around itself, meanwhile the moon also would have moved a little ahead, that is 12 degree 30 minutes. So, the earth will take 25 minutes more for the point A to come to the opposite to moon and experience the high tide. So, the time difference between two high tides is of 12 hours and 25 minutes. Now, the next point we are going to learn, that is waves. Dear children, the seawater gets pushed by the wind and ripples are generated on the water surface. These are called waves. Same like when you take milk or tea in the saucer and when you blow in it, ripples are generated. So in the same way, ripples are generated on the surface of water due to winds. These are called waves. The seawater moves up and down or slightly forward and backward due to the waves. The waves bring the energy contained in them to the coast. Means what moves towards the coast, that is not water, but that is the energy which is generated due to the waves. Now it is necessary to learn the structure of the waves. So let us observe the image for the better understanding. Here you can see the structure of a wave. The raised up portion of a wave is called crest. You can see here the raised up portion, crest, crest, crest. The depressed one is called trough, trough, trough. The vertical distance between a crest and a falling trough is called the amplitude. So, this is the amplitude. Amplitude. The distance between two successive crests or troughs is called wavelength. The distance between two crests as well as two troughs is called wavelength. See here, wavelength. Okay. Now this is the structure of wave. Dear children, now let us see velocity of waves. The water in the wave does not move. What moves is the energy we saw. The main reason of wave generation is wind. But sometimes due to earthquakes or volcanic eruptions occurring below the floor of the sea, waves are generated. Now these waves are very destructive. They cause huge loss of property as well as life. These waves are called tsunamis. In 2004, tsunami waves were generated because of the earthquake that took place near Sumatra Island of Indonesia. They devastated the east coast of India as well as of Sri Lanka. So, This is the velocity or speed of the wave is related on the reason behind the generation of the wave. So in today's lesson we have seen, let me revise in short, we have seen what is meant by tides first of all. Then we saw centrifugal and gravitational force. Then we saw how tides occur, occurrence, the factors responsible for the occurrence of the tides we saw. Types of tides, that is spring tide and neap tide we saw. We saw the reason behind timings of the tides change daily. As well as we saw waves. So dear viewers, subscribe Sangli Shikshan Sanstha's YouTube channel and press the bell icon for further notifications. Thank you very much.